Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Edible World podcast, continuing the Indoor series. I'm one of your hosts, Michael.
And I am Steve. We got something a little bit different this time. I mean, we've been doing things a little bit different recently. We had that wonderful interview with Lisa Emerose.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to that, make sure you go back to the previous episode.
It's so good.
Listen to it.
I've listened to it a couple times. Like,
yeah,
it's so good.
Actually, yeah,
really
it's an
good.
amazing conversation.
But we're gonna switch it up a little bit more, even, and rather than talking about a particular wild edible, we're going to do fermentation.
Yeah, just kind of, we're going to start off the first half with just kind of generally discussing fermentation, the different kinds of fermentation, what the process means and how it works and how it changes our food a little bit, and also how we've personally worked with fermentation in our lives.
Yeah.
So, to start that off, fermentation is an aging process, right? But it's also, so as far as like human interaction with fermentation, it's about controlling specific environments to allow specific bacteria that we like to thrive. And that same environment is inhospitable to bacteria we don't like that also rots food and stuff. So when we create those environments, that allows these like magical processes to happen. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of nutshelling, I think, the whole thing as a whole. Do you have anything to add to that, like a little bit?
I mean, not to that little bit. That's pretty all inclusive. I mean, it just allows the bacteria, the good bacteria that we want to encourage to do just these very special things to the ingredients that we are trying to ferment. And yeah, it's really just, some of it's about total control. Like if you're in the realm of brewing and things like that, you want to control just about all that you can. And then there's some that are just, easy.
Yeah, more funky freestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
So, to just kind of cast a general net to let you know, if you haven't really thought about it, the types of products that most of us encounter on a regular basis that are fermented. We can think about things like alcohol products. All alcohol is gone through some sort of fermentation of some sort. We have vinegar, which is a byproduct of different bacteria taking over alcohol.
Yeah.
So, and then we have sauerkraut, which is more like lacto fermentation, which is a bit more of these sour flavors. Soy sauce is a fermented product. Kefir, yeah. Cheese.
Yeah.
Yogurt. So,
kombucha.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, kombucha.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
It's a lot of our favorite things, I think, because there's a lot of really specific nutritional benefits that come with introducing these specific bacterias and flavors and nutritional compounds into our digestive system. So, how have you personally, Steve, used fermentation? What was like the first thing you ever like really successfully fermented?
The first thing that was just like mind blown is it's this easy. This is nearly impossible to screw up. Was sauerkraut.
Yep.
So I'm a gardener, as if you listen to the show, So at the end of a season, you have a head of cabbage, which is what mine was. But sauerkraut's cabbage is just dipping your toe into the water.
Was it like white or red or?
It was white. It was just your traditional green cabbage.
Okay.
Nothing fancy. And yeah, it was just. I mean, it's a just incredibly simple process of drawing some of those natural liquids out of the cabbage, and then maybe shoving it in a jar. So you draw the liquids out of the cabbage with a little bit of kosher salt or Himalayan salt, something like that.
So for like sauerkraut specifically, you use salt to create the right environment. We're creating a salinic environment as opposed to something like beer or wine or alcohol, which enjoys sugar, a sugary environment. So
exactly.
You add all the salt to the cabbage, right?
Yeah.
And it pulls out all these waters, and then on that cabbage already is the
necessary
bacteria.
Yeah,
we
the
want.
bacteria.
It's all around us. We're breathing it. We're inhaling it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But so you squeeze, you just like vice grip that cabbage. Right?
There's several different ways to
like
do it, man.
Harder.
Some people I've seen people just hollow out the center of the cabbage and pour.
And you just pour a
salt
ton of salt
into
there, right?
it.
Yeah,
I didn't do that. I julienned my cabbage with different thicknesses, just because I like a little bit of texture to my kraut. And then, like I said, salt, draw it out, shove it in a jar, top it off with a little bit of water. There's all sorts of cool little weights, or if you don't have a weight or don't want that extra expense, because everyone has jars, I think. If you've ever bought a pasta sauce, you have an extra jar laying around somewhere. Then there's all sorts of cool little tricks as far as like keeping your kraut submerged without overfilling the jar, and then also without buying extra things.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that'll be my tip for this half is, if you save that core from the bottom of the cabbage and you save one cabbage leaf, you put the leaf on top of the ferment, and then you put the core to apply pressure with the lid.
Yeah,
if
that's
that
a great
makes sense.
idea.
So it just keeps it submerged, which is where you want that kraut to be. So that's my tip. How about you? What's yours? What's going on?
I think, I guess that's almost kind of a hard question to answer creatively, because I feel like a lot of people's entry point into fermentation is sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Because it is that easy. It's 2 ingredients, cabbage and salt. And it's that easy. And I think the recipe is like 2% salt by weight. So, but always, make sure you check your recipe to make sure that you're creating a good ferment and that you don't feed yourself something bad. And in the case of fermenting, I think with all cases, my little tip for this half would be that our nose is an incredible tool. Mm-hmm. If you've eaten fermented food before, you know what it's supposed to smell like. You know what good things smell like. Sometimes sauerkraut can get like really weird, but different bacteria have different smells. They let off. They have body odors and like body functions just like us, and so they're letting out all this gas, and they smell different. So you always want to be able to use your nose, and you want to go and try some of these fermented foods before you make them yourself, so that you're making sure that like, it's fermenting, it's supposed to smell like garbage, and that's not true at all. It's supposed to smell sour and funky and just weird, but it's not supposed to make you go ugh.
Yeah, if you're using like cabbage for sauerkraut or any of the like the brassica family or cruciferous vegetables, you're gonna get that are you cooking cabbage in the house kind of funk.
Yeah, it is.
So that's unavoidable.
Yeah, it's like sucky, yeah.
But it shouldn't smell rotten.
Yeah, exactly.
At all.
Yeah.
And you're like Michael said, that your nose is going to be the best indicator. And I just while researching this, the number of cases of like food poisoning from fermented items, like wild fermented items, are next to nil. Like this is pretty safe stuff.
Yeah. When you follow a recipe, you follow the right directions, and you've equipped yourself with the right knowledge, it's almost fail-proof.
Yeah.
There are some conditions like trichoderma, which is like a green mold that you almost cannot get rid of, and some houses do have that issue. Some people might encounter some difficulty, but for the most part, check the recipe first, and if you're doing it right with the right weights and proportions and everything, and the right salt, that's important too. So as far as sauerkraut is concerned, you have to use the right salt. You can't just use your normal table iodized salt. You got to use sea salt, and I would use fine sea salt or coarse sea salt, something that like has kind of the same amount of mass, because you want to work by weight, not necessarily by tablespoon measurement. The tablespoon of finely ground salt is going to be actually a lot more salt than a tablespoon of rock salt.
Yes.
So just keep an eye out for that. And as far as fermenting with salt and lacto fermentation in those environments, You don't have to use cabbage either. That's a typical one, but you can use beets, you can use carrots, all sorts of different root vegetables. You can add onions in there. So there's a lot of different varieties that you can make with lacto fermentation and create just like different varieties of sour flavors. It doesn't have to be just cabbage, but that's a great starting point. So after that, have you brewed much?
Not really. Just a little bit here and there. We have common friends that are in the big leagues as far as brewing goes.
Yeah.
But I personally haven't made a ton. I mean, just while I was saying a little bit earlier that during my apple cider vinegar ferment, you taste along the way just to gauge whether it's sour, too sour, not sour enough. Mm-hmm. And the apple honey water mixture that I was fermenting actually tasted almost like an apple soda. So it was really like a very lightly sweetened apple soda. So I mean, I'm just really getting started with the maybe drawing a little bit of booze out of my ferments. I guess I have made moonshine before.
What? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Over COVID in my basement, my uncle has a 15-gallon still.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's not really fermentation. That's distillation of a wort still. So I guess, yeah, it does.
Yeah, because you still have to ferment the wort.
Yeah,
to create
that's true.
Because you're extracting the
you're
alcohol.
extracting the sugar, the alcohols out from the sugars. Yeah. So I guess I have.
Neat. Didn't know we had a moonshiner in our midst.
Yep.
That's cool.
I have some in my house. We can drink some.
Hell yeah.
It's delicious.
Let's do it. Well, we got to hang next week, have a little personal holiday separation.
Yeah.
And, we got to hang out for once and not record the podcast. We don't hang out.
We'll send pictures of our Christmas party.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I have done a bit of work brewing. You're right. We do have lots of friends in the brewing industry and tons of brewery options around us. So it's kind of hard to justify spending the time and energy and making my own beer when it's not going to be nearly as good as anything else I can get really, really easily. So instead, I've focused on making things that are a little bit more inaccessible, such as wine and mead, mostly mead, because I think working with honey is a really cool aspect. And so that's another thing we can use for preservation too, is like encapsulating things in honey. I don't know, have you ever done that?
I haven't, but that sounds delicious.
Yeah, so depending on the type of thing you use, sometimes like different fruit will activate the sugars in the honey and it'll start to ferment, but with drier things, you can preserve things in honey. So that's so another cool little preservation. I guess is a fermentation episode, but I guess the real message we want to get across through our rambling conversation is that there are lots of different ways to change your food and use them in novel ways, and also to utilize. We're going to segue into the second half with how you can incorporate all your wild food into these fermentation processes, and what we've done as well. So
I guess just one more little thing on the why portion of this, or the how, like how this works, why this works, why would we want to do it, why would you want to ferment a head of cabbage instead of just chopping it up and sauteing it and making it delicious that way? It's a lot quicker, right? And what I like to think about is how nature naturally ferments. So my example I'll use is ruminants, or like cows, for instance. They have that four-stomach system that allows them to take something as simple as like a grass in a field and turn it into body fat and mass and meat and muscle. And one of the ways they do that is their four-stomach system. It allows them to like cycle this grass until it ferments, till it becomes more available, more bioavailable. And this is exactly what we're doing. We just don't got all these stomachs laying around. Exactly. So we have to use jars and things of that nature. So that's how I like to think about it. And
that's such a valuable point, Steve. Thank you. No, absolutely. It makes it part of that fermentation process is this bacteria breaking down the food for us. You're right. And yeah, thank you for providing that valuable point. With that, I think we'll mosey into the second half. So we'll be right back with you.
See you in a sec.
Oh, hey, Steve.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Well, what's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just got this new water bottle, but it just looks so plain.
Well, have I got the store for you. Introducing the Wild Edible World Podcast Merch Store.
Wowie, wow!
It's the merch store where you can get all of your favorite podcasts merch for all your decorating purposes.
How do I find that?
Go to wildedibleworldpod.shopify.com or go to any of our Instagram and media accounts and view the link in the bio.
Wowie, wow!
You've just entered the back half of the Wild Edible World podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, we're back.
Hey, it's me. So in the second half, we wanted to talk a little bit more about how we have personally used wild food in fermentation and the different things we've done with it, as well as give you a solid book recommendation because there's a pretty cool author out there that does really cool stuff. So when we talk about fermenting like wild foods, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
I would say that the batch of what was supposed to be apple cider that ended up being apple cider vinegar, crab apples ferment that I had
this
going
year?
on. Yeah. Remember the gallon that I had?
Yeah.
Bunch of vinegar. I don't know.
Is it good?
Yeah,
Have you
it's
tried
tasty as heck.
Oh, okay,
it's
cool.
dry.
Well, we got to do an exchange.
It's dry. Yeah. We definitely exchange because you made that ruby red grapefruit, not actually grapefruit, but
yeah.
fucking delicious thing. Yeah, we can definitely trade. I have a ton of that stuff. It's so dry. I got to back sweeten it or something. It's just so dry.
Cool.
But we can do that. But yes, so apples are the first thing that comes to mind. But I also love to incorporate like the little things, so like dandelion greens and dandelion stems into a sauerkraut. So like a 100% dandelion sauerkraut, you'd have to do some gathering,
Sure.
But but adding maybe like a 30% ratio to cabbage and getting it going that way, heck yeah, dude.
Yeah, and it actually breaks down some of those bitterness compounds too. It doesn't taste like you're just like eating raw dandelion.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally support that. For me, I think that honestly, the first thing that comes to mind isn't actually something that I've done, but I've almost done it, and I think I haven't done it because I haven't been able to collect enough. But black raspberry wine. Didn't we try some of that?
We did.
Okay, so and that was during the episode too. So yeah, an entire wine made out of black raspberries, which just like grow profusely around here.
Yeah, we could do it.
Yeah, we could. I was joking that I think I haven't been able to because of this person, because like we just go to all the same places, and so like I can't ever get enough berries, but I've gotten enough to make a pie. But okay, so here's another fun thing that I think is going to be kind of novel to a lot of people is koji fermentation. So that's the same culture that is used for soy sauce. And instead of using soybeans, we're just using a different medium. So it's still creating the tamari and the soy sauce. Like you get two products whenever you ferment soy sauce because there's like a lot of juice that comes to the top and then juice that falls to the bottom or something. I'm not entirely sure about the process. Koji is still kind of a learning process for me. And I think that might be true for everybody that uses koji because it does something weird to every single food item it comes into contact with, like apples. It makes them like sour, and like it turns sweet things sour and sour things sweet. I don't know what to say. So I made a Juneberry koji ferment.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I don't have much experience, but I love the things it produces.
It was like a sour Juneberry applesauce. It was really, really awesome because it just like breaks down the berries. They kind of like burst and ferment, and then just left it out for a couple days. So that's usually the idea with ferments is, and in the modern world, we let them sit out and let the bacteria have its way for a couple days, or maybe a week or two, for most fermented food products. And then we transfer them into the refrigerator to kind of halt the fermentation because of the temperature. It's too cold for them, and then they kind of like stop working.
This kraut is sour enough.
Allegedly. And so you would think that back in the day, when most people didn't really have access to food boxes and stuff, ice boxes, or cooling systems, or maybe even a root cellar, they would use fermentation as this way of keeping these nutrients in a stable, they're kind of like in a stasis whenever you ferment them, and they keep them in this brine. So I think it's really valuable, and it's more valuable, I think, because of the reasons you brought up earlier, because it unlocks all these nutrients and it keeps the food good.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's like it's just like this kind of cheat code that's been waiting, that it is just there for us to use, that nature just has. I don't know. I think it's really fun.
Definitely, it's been used like forever. You know.
Yeah.
Fermentation, cheeses, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
So beyond, fermenting with wild foods further, I've made mead. So mead is another pretty introductory fermentation experiment, because it's literally just honey and water. You can add commercial yeast if you want, if you're using commercial honey. Or if you want to support a local bee farmer or rescue bee service, I'm sure there are places nearby to you, wherever you are, that can offer you some sort of local raw honey. And raw honey is the important part.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah, because
they're everywhere. Even if you've never noticed them, there's signs on the side of the road that say local honey, fresh honey, that sort of thing, raw honey.
Yep.
And you're right, raw is the key.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So whenever honey is filtered and processed to make it clear and beautiful, I think they heat it up a little.
Yeah, they heat it.
So yeah, that makes it easier to flow, and so that there's less loss and everything. But what that also does is that kills a lot of the really important microorganisms and nutritional compounds that are in honey that make it so nutritious. It's still really nutritious after the fact, but it's even more nutritious when it's raw. So, and that's the case with all food, honestly, all food. Some food is necessary to be cooked, but in order for our bodies to process it. But if everything has more nutrition raw, and then cooking it kind of kills a little bit of the nutrition.
Sure.
Basic
Definitely.
facts, y'all. So, what else?
I guess some tips for getting started if you've never fermented before. The best thing about like a wild ferment is that you can start small. You can make sauerkraut in a pint jar.
Yeah.
You can make it on small scale if you're nervous, or maybe you just want minimal risk on that first batch. You can start small, and that would be my tip: is start small. because you can always make more. It might take a little while, but it's definitely well worth it. It's going to improve your digestion. It's going to improve the bioavailability of the vegetables that you're eating. Start small, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm going to compound on that a little bit with my tip and say that get out there and start whenever. Even if you're hearing this episode when we release it, which is going to be dead winter. I'm still recording foraging videos. There's still lots of stuff out there that is delicious, tasty, fun to eat. And you can just grab a handful of juniper berries or rose hips and throw them in a small jar and add the right amount of sugar and add water and have a fun little soda right there and within 2 days.
Don't you do a natural sodas class, like a wild edible?
I have done one, yeah.
Yeah,
so I'll be doing one next year too.
That sounds so good.
Yeah. We make a half gallon of soda with ingredients we all collect. And at the end of the week, you have a fizzy beverage with a really interesting flavor that you will never be able to find anywhere or anytime else, which is just what I think the fun thing about foraging and how fermenting kind of works with that, just like capturing a time and an essence and an area, and fermentation just kind of unlocks deeper concepts within that.
I'm so intrigued by the possibility of like a crabapple soda, like with all the different varieties we've tried over this past season. Oh man, I'm so pumped.
Yeah, we're going to. Yeah, it's going to be good
definitely
next
year.
Want that.
Shout outs.
Yeah. So we have, there's a pretty well-known and pretty well-respected forager out on the West Coast. So because this is fermentation, just fermenting in general, it's a concept that is available everywhere. So it doesn't really matter where this person is from. This name is Pascal Baudar. So that's Pascalbaudar. He's pretty well known. His books are gorgeous. So he has 3 publications. One's on, I think it's called A Wildcrafted Fermentation, Wildcrafted Brewer, and Wildcrafted Vinegar is his newest book. And I have all 3 of them. They are gorgeous. He's a phenomenal photographer, just gorgeous photos all the time. And he does really cool. That book is where I learned how to just grab yeast off of berries that you find everywhere. It's all around us. He has a really good way of explaining it, and his methods are fun and mass-based. So that's the important thing, is that it's not like teaspoon of this, teaspoon of that. It's like, no, you need to calculate percentages of weight, which is not that hard. It sounds a little intimidating working with math, but sometimes...
Yeah, just call us if you need help. We're super good.
No problem. Yeah, messages, call us. We're here for you guys. So, the way his recipes always worked for me and got me off on a really good foot for fermenting and making like random wild sodas on a forest walk soda, stuff like that. So, highly recommend Mr. Baudar. His books are just almost undefeated as far as beauty is concerned.
Nice.
That's
really
really
awesome.
Damn pretty.
I'm honestly not familiar, but
no kidding.
I'm gonna look him up. Yeah.
Oh man, he does so much cool stuff beyond the fermenting and the wild food stuff. He does wild pottery as well. I own several of his pieces. I'm very proud to own several of his pieces because they're kind of hard to get, and they're made completely out of local clay that he walks out into like the deserts of California or wherever he is and just like digs this clay out of the side of a hill and then, figures out if it's good enough with the roll test or whatever, and then has his own little kiln, fires it, does the whole process start to finish, and it's really like rustic. Again, it's, about that concept of capturing a place. And so now we're moving from vegetables into the earth we're standing on as well. Just like, these are all snapshots of these little places he's been to. and beautiful works of art made for holding wild dishes as well. So
that's so
right
cool,
up my alley.
man.
Yeah, he's such a cool dude.
Yeah, it reminds me. It like brings me back to like my childhood, finding like a clay pit, because there are a couple in Joliet. It makes me wonder. I wonder if I could make shit out of it.
You
know?
100% can.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah,
let's
we
make
have
shit
to.
out of clay.
Yep, absolutely.
My shout out is going to be to a gentleman named Sandor Katz.
Yes, of course.
He's a killer. He has I think two books out.
Yeah.
Wild Fermentation, and then The Art of Wild Fermentation, which goes a little bit more in depth. And he is self-taught. He doesn't have a degree. He's never taken like microbiology classes. He just became fascinated with fermentation and has just been kicking ass. And he gives like talks all over the world, and he's just so cool to me. And you should definitely look up his name. Check out some of his podcasts. Check out his social media.
Last name is like Krautz, right? It's almost like it's like sauerkraut. But,
yeah.
You know, he's such a nice dude. He follows me on Instagram even. We follow each other.
That's awesome.
Good dude.
Look at you.
Yeah. That's how you know he's a good guy.
Yeah. That's truly the sign.
That's my metric. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's going to close out our fermentation episode, our first fermentation episode at least.
This is just us.
We're going to be kind of freeballing for the next couple months until spring picks up. Freeballing? That was a weird...
yeah, it was a little
Sorry.
strange. That's all right. You can freeball if you want to. I mean, you're
yeah,
your own
whatever.
individual.
We're not going to talk about that on this show.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk more about preservation, fermentation, different, just kind of the behind the scenes of wild food as opposed to ingredient spotlights while we're stuck in the dredges of winter.
And hopefully we'll get a couple more interviews. I have a couple buddies.
Yeah.
My friend Mike is coming in from Montana.
Exactly,
he's a guide in Montana.
Yep.
Maybe we could sit down with him.
No, we should. Absolutely. Let's sit down with him and have a chat. We have, a couple other, like another podcast that I think we're going to do a little chat with Terms of Service.
So excited. Shout out Terms of Service.
More food service podcast. So, I mean, if you guys are interested in talk to us, reach out. But as far as plugs are concerned, we should plug our merch store, too. Oh. If you guys like pins, stickers, magnets, or keychains.
We're your guys.
We're your guys.
That's us.
So check out wildedibleworldpod.myshopify.com and get all your Wild Edible World merch needs. With that, it has been a sincere pleasure.
Wowie wow.
Wowie wow. Telling you guys about all the best food you can find for free, trailside, curbside, or low tide. This has been your host, Michael.
It's been a blast.
We love you.